The deep space research vessel Horizon hummed with a quiet intensity that only comes from prolonged isolation. Zara Chen sat motionless before her communication array, her dark eyes reflecting the countless holographic displays that surrounded her workstation. Outside the ship's reinforced viewports, the universe stretched into an infinite tapestry of darkness, punctuated by distant stellar pinpricks. Most would consider the current mission mundane, a routine deep space listening expedition along the outer rim of the Orion Arm. The Horizon's primary task involved monitoring background radiation, tracking potential communication anomalies, and collecting microdata that would later be analyzed by research teams back on Earth. But Zara knew better than to consider any mission routine. Her fingers danced across the quantum interface panel, adjusting sensitive receivers that could pick up the faintest whispers from the cosmic background. Years of training had taught her to distinguish between random electromagnetic noise and potential communication signals. What most technicians would dismiss as static, she could parse into intricate patterns of potential meaning. A subtle oscillation caught her attention. Most communication specialists would have overlooked the barely perceptible signal, a fragmented series of electromagnetic pulses that seemed to flicker at the very edge of detectability. But Zara's intuition was legendary among her colleagues. She had earned a reputation for discovering communication patterns where others found only silence. With practiced precision, she began to isolate and amplify the signal. Complex algorithmic filters stripped away layers of cosmic interference, revealing something extraordinary beneath the noise. The signal wasn't random. It carried a structure, a rhythmic complexity that suggested intentional communication. "Computer," she spoke softly, her voice cutting through the ambient hum of the ship's systems. "Initialize full spectrum analysis on current signal parameters." The ship's artificial intelligence responded in a neutral tone. "Analyzing. Preliminary results indicate non-standard communication protocol. Source location: uncharted region. Sector 7 Gamma." Zara leaned closer to her display. Sector 7 Gamma was notorious among deep space researchers, a region so vast and unexplored that most navigation charts marked it with nothing more than a blank space. Expeditions into that sector were rare, often considered too risky for standard research missions. The signal grew stronger as her filters refined its parameters. Fragments of visual data began to resolve, not in traditional imaging formats, but in complex quantum encoding that suggested an advanced technological origin. Glimpses of a world became visible, crystalline structures collapsing, atmospheric systems destabilizing, entire planetary regions transforming in violent, catastrophic sequences. Something was terribly wrong. Her communication logs began filling with translated fragments, words in an unknown language, or perhaps more accurately, conceptual transmissions that defied traditional linguistic interpretation, started to take shape. Concepts of desperate survival, of a civilization facing complete annihilation, began to emerge. "Computer," Zara called again, her voice now tinged with an edge of urgency. "Cross-reference these transmission fragments with known galactic communication databases." Seconds passed. The ship's AI processed massive amounts of data, comparing the strange signal against millions of recorded communication patterns. "No direct match found," the computer reported. "Signal characteristics suggest origin from the Krell-Theory communication network. Last recorded contact, 213 standard years ago." The Krell-Theory, a species that most considered extinct, a civilization that had vanished so completely from galactic records that they were little more than a footnote in xenorteological studies. And yet, here was evidence of their continued existence, or more accurately, their imminent destruction. Zara understood immediately that she was witnessing something extraordinary. This was more than a routine communication anomaly. This was a moment that could potentially rewrite humanity's understanding of interstellar dynamics. The signal continued to pulse, each transmission a heartbeat of a dying civilization, calling out into the vast, indifferent universe. And Zara Chen was the only one listening. As the first fragments of the Krell Theory's desperate message fully resolved, She knew that everything was about to change. The quantum communication lab of the horizon pulsed with an electric intensity. Diego Ramirez stood before a complex array of holographic displays, his fingers moving with a surgeon's precision across quantum-entangled interface panels. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed hours of uninterrupted concentration, a testament to the magnitude of the discovery. "This isn't just noise," he muttered to himself, adjusting microscopic quantum filters that could parse the most infinitesimal communication patterns. The signal Zara had discovered was unlike anything he had encountered in his 15-year career as a deep space communication specialist. Most of his colleagues would have dismissed the transmission as random cosmic interference, but Diego saw something different, a pattern so complex, so deliberately intricate that it defied conventional understanding of communication technologies. Each fragment of the signal was a puzzle piece, and he was determined to assemble the full picture. The ship's primary computer hummed in the background, its quantum processors working overtime to support Diego's intensive analysis. Lines of holographic code danced around him, shifting and transforming as he applied increasingly sophisticated decryption algorithms. Slowly, painfully, the signal began to resolve. What emerged was not just a message, but a visual and conceptual tapestry of absolute desperation. Fragments of planetary data mixed with emotional imprints, a communication method so advanced it transcended traditional language. Diego realized he was witnessing something more than a distress call. This was a complete record of a civilization's final moments. Images began to take shape. Crystalline cities that once gleamed with technological sophistication now crumbled under massive geological stress. Atmospheric processors, once marvels of engineering, sparked and failed, unable to counteract the planetary breakdown. Entire continental regions transformed from vibrant ecosystems to radioactive wastelands in mere moments. "Computer," Diego called out, his voice tight with concentration. "Apply quantum resonance filter. Isolate emotional context within transmission." The ship's artificial intelligence responded with a series of complex visualizations. What emerged was a landscape of pure, unfiltered emotion. Fear, desperation, a profound sense of abandonment that seemed to transcend individual experience and represent an entire species' collective consciousness. The Krell-Thuri were not just dying. They were experiencing a form of extinction that went beyond physical destruction. Diego's hands moved faster, pulling apart the signal's layers. Each decrypted fragment revealed more of the civilization's tragic story. They had been a species of extraordinary technological achievement, with a deep connection to their planetary ecosystem that went beyond mere survival. Their cities were living organisms, their technology an extension of their biological and cultural identity. And now, everything was collapsing. Satellite scans began to overlay the communication data. Diego could see the precise mechanisms of planetary destruction, a complex interaction of geological instability, atmospheric degradation, and what appeared to be the aftermath of a massive stellar event. Whatever had happened to the Krell-Thuri homeworld was no natural disaster. This was a systematic, near-total destruction. Hours passed. The communication lab became Diego's entire universe, a confined space of quantum displays, shifting holographic interfaces, and the persistent pulse of undying civilization's final message. Most remarkable was the signal's persistence. Despite the total destruction of their infrastructure, someone, or something, was maintaining this transmission. It was a final act of defiance, a desperate attempt to ensure their existence would not be forgotten by the universe. As the final layers of the transmission resolved, Diego understood the true weight of what they had discovered. This was more than a scientific breakthrough. This was a moral challenge to every spacefaring civilization. The Krell-Thuri were sending a message, not just of their impending extinction, but of a profound hope that someone somewhere might still care enough to listen. Diego leaned back, his body exhausted but his mind racing. He knew he needed to speak with Zara immediately. Whatever they had discovered, it would change everything humanity understood about communication, survival, and their place in the universe. The signal continued to pulse, a heartbeat of a civilization on the brink of total erasure, waiting to be heard. The conference room at the United Earth Space Exploration Headquarters felt like a pressure cooker of tension. Holographic displays flickered with the Krell transmission, casting an ethereal blue light across the faces of humanity's top diplomats, scientists, and military strategists. Diego Ramirez stood beside Zara Chen, their presentation a carefully crafted mosaic of scientific evidence and emotional appeal. They had spent weeks preparing this moment, transforming their initial discovery from a mere research finding into a potential humanitarian mission. The data is unequivocal, Diego began, his voice steady despite the weight of their discovery. We are looking at the final moments of an entire civilization. The Krell are experiencing a planetary collapse that will result in complete extinction within weeks. Admiral Helena Rodriguez, head of the Interstellar Exploration Committee, leaned back in her chair. Her weathered features betrayed decades of pragmatic decision-making. And what precisely do you propose we do? A rescue mission of this magnitude would require resources beyond any previous humanitarian effort. The room fell silent. Zara stepped forward, activating a series of holographic projections that showed the intricate details of the Krell world. Geological stress points, atmospheric degradation, and the rapidly diminishing habitable zones created a devastating visual narrative. This isn't just about saving a species, she explained. This is about understanding a form of technological and biological integration we've never seen before. The Krell represent a completely unique approach to planetary civilization. Behind the scenes, the political calculations were brutal. The Galactic Confederation, a loose alliance of spacefaring species, had already determined the Krell were beyond saving. The cost of intervention was deemed too high, the potential return on investment too low. But Zara and Diego had anticipated this response. They had prepared something more powerful than diplomatic arguments. With a subtle gesture, Diego activated a secondary display. Social media feeds, research forums, and public communication channels began to fill the room. A groundswell of human response to the Krell transmission. Scientists, students, activists, and ordinary citizens were already mobilizing. Hashtag campaigns trended globally. Research institutions began offering resources. Private technology companies saw an unprecedented opportunity for humanitarian innovation. We're not asking for government approval, Diego said quietly. We're showing you that humanity has already decided. The room watched in stunned silence as crowd-funded resources began to materialize. Tech entrepreneurs pledged advanced terraforming equipment. Research universities committed entire departments to studying the Krell transmission. Private space exploration companies started reconfiguring existing mission parameters. Admiral Rodriguez understood the political landscape was shifting beneath her feet. This was no longer a top-down decision. This was a global movement driven by human curiosity, compassion, and an unyielding spirit of exploration. Dr. Elena Martinez, the committee's chief xenobiologist, reviewed the transmission data. The potential scientific knowledge is unprecedented, she muttered. We could learn more about planetary ecosystems, quantum communication, and biological adaptation in one mission than in the past century of space exploration. The economic argument began to take shape. What initially seemed like an impossible resource-intensive rescue mission was transforming into a potentially revolutionary scientific endeavor. Private investors saw opportunity where bureaucrats saw only expense. Tech companies recognized the potential for breakthrough technologies. Research institutions understood the unprecedented scientific value of studying a dying civilization up close. Zara and Diego had done more than present a rescue mission. They had created a movement. As the meeting progressed, the initial resistance began to crumble. The impossible was becoming possible, not through governmental decree, but through the collective will of humanity. We'll need a comprehensive plan, Admiral Rodriguez finally said, her tone shifting from skepticism to determination. But yes, we're going to attempt to save the Krell. The room erupted in a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. What had begun as a routine deep space communication analysis was now a mission that would redefine humanity's approach to interstellar exploration. Outside the conference room, the first waves of volunteers were already preparing. Humanity had made its choice. The research facility stretched across 3 interconnected geodesic domes, perched on the windswept coast of New Zealand. Inside the central dome, Dr. Miguel Rodriguez worked with the intensity that bordered on obsession. Holographic displays surrounded him, each one representing a different aspect of the most complex planetary restoration project in human history. Dr. Rodriguez was not just a terraforming expert. He was a quantum ecological engineer, a discipline so new it barely existed before the Krull theory discovery. His team represented the best minds from multiple disciplines: planetary scientists, quantum physicists, biological engineers, and xenorchaeologists. "The traditional approach won't work," he muttered, manipulating complex holographic models of the Krull theory homeworld. Traditional terraforming technologies were linear, predictable. But the Krull theory world required something entirely different: a living, adaptive system that could respond to planetary stress in real time. The transmission they had received was more than a distress call. It was a complete blueprint of a planetary ecosystem so advanced it challenged everything humanity understood about planetary engineering. Krull theory technology didn't separate technology from biology. Their cities were living organisms. Their atmospheric processors were more like complex biological networks than mechanical systems. Saving their world would require more than traditional restoration. It would require a complete reimagining of planetary intervention. Dr. Rodriguez's breakthrough came from an unexpected combination of technologies. Quantum resonance processors developed for deep space communication, nano-adaptive engineering originally designed for medical treatments, biological network algorithms created for studying neural systems. "We're not just going to stabilize their planet," he explained to his core team during a late-night strategy session. "We're going to create a living intervention system that can adapt and heal in real time." The initial simulations were promising but terrifying. Their proposed system would essentially become a planetary immune response, a network of nanoscale processors and adaptive biological interfaces that could respond to planetary stress points faster than any existing technology. Most remarkable was the system's ability to learn. Unlike traditional terraforming technologies that followed preset parameters, this system would continuously analyze and adapt. It could potentially save not just the Krull theory's current world, but provide a template for planetary restoration across the galaxy. Funding poured in from unexpected sources. Tech companies saw potential commercial applications. Research institutions recognized the scientific breakthrough. Private investors understood this was more than a rescue mission. This was a revolution in planetary engineering. Dr. Rosa Lee, a quantum biology specialist, developed the adaptive neural network that would serve as the system's core intelligence. Her design could interpret the complex communication patterns from the original Krull theory transmission, essentially allowing the restoration system to communicate with the planet itself. Weeks turned into months. Simulations ran continuously. Each iteration brought them closer to a solution that seemed impossible just months earlier. The team worked in shifts, driven by a collective understanding that they were attempting something unprecedented. This wasn't just about saving an alien civilization. This was about proving humanity's capacity for complex, compassionate problem-solving. Their final prototype looked nothing like traditional terraforming equipment. It was a living network, part technology, part biological system, that could be deployed across an entire planet. Nanoscale processors would interface directly with planetary systems, creating a responsive, adaptive restoration mechanism. "We're creating a planetary healing system," Dr. Rodriguez explained during the final presentation. "Not just repairing damage, but understanding the fundamental ecological and technological integration of an entire world." The day of the first full system test arrived with a quiet intensity. Holographic displays tracked every microscopic interaction. Quantum sensors measured responses beyond traditional scientific understanding. As the first adaptive networks came online, something extraordinary happened. The system didn't just respond to planetary stress, it began to understand it. Humanity had created more than a rescue technology. They had developed a new way of thinking about planetary restoration, an approach that saw technology not as a tool, but as a living, adaptive partner. The impossible was becoming possible. The global launch facility in Guyana Space Center transformed into a hive of unprecedented activity. What had begun as a speculative rescue mission had become a worldwide movement that defied every conventional approach to space exploration. Lena Chen, the mission's chief logistics coordinator, watched as ships from different continents and private corporations began to assemble. This was not a government-mandated mission. This was a collective human endeavor that had emerged from something deeper than political directives, a shared sense of compassion and scientific curiosity. Private space exploration companies that had once competed ruthlessly now worked in perfect synchronization. SpaceX modules integrated seamlessly with European Space Agency infrastructure. Japanese quantum communication technologies merged with Brazilian adaptive engineering systems. Each contribution was a puzzle piece in a complex, global rescue mission. The financial model was equally revolutionary. Crowd-funded resources had become the primary funding mechanism. Social media platforms hosted real-time donation trackers. Schools, universities, and community groups organized fundraising events. Even children's science clubs contributed custom-designed components for the mission. "We're not just sending a rescue mission," Lena explained during a global broadcast. "We're demonstrating what humanity can achieve when we work together." Corporate sponsorships came with unprecedented conditions. Companies were no longer just looking for financial returns. They wanted to be part of a mission that would be remembered in human history. Tech giants competed not through marketing, but through the quality and innovation of their contributions. The rescue fleet was a testament to human diversity and collaborative spirit. Each ship carried not just technological equipment, but the hopes and dreams of millions. Sensors, restoration modules, communication arrays, every component told a story of human ingenuity. Dr. Miguel Rodriguez's planetary restoration technology was the mission's beating heart. His adaptive nano-network systems were distributed across multiple ships, ensuring redundancy and comprehensive planetary coverage. The technology was so advanced that it could potentially communicate with the planet itself, reading its stress points, understanding its ecological rhythms. Launch preparations became a global event. Massive viewing screens in city centers around the world displayed real-time mission updates. Schools suspended regular classes to watch the preparations. Universities hosted live analysis sessions. Every demographic was invested in this mission. The psychological preparation was equally intense. The mission team underwent specialized training that went beyond traditional astronaut preparation. They were not just rescuers. They were potential first contact specialists, diplomats, and scientific pioneers. Communication specialists like Diego Ramirez developed comprehensive protocols for potential interactions with the Krell Thuri. The transmission they had received was complex, part distress signal, part cultural archive. Understanding it would require more than technical expertise. It would require empathy, patience, and an open mind. Backup plans were meticulously developed. Multiple scenarios were war-gamed, from complete planetary restoration to potential evacuation strategies. Every possible contingency was analyzed, modeled, and prepared for. The night before the launch, a global moment of solidarity emerged. Cities around the world dimmed their lights in a symbolic gesture of support. Social media exploded with messages of hope, scientific excitement, and collective human achievement. Launch day arrived with an electricity that defied description. The assembled fleet was unlike anything in human history, not a military expedition, not a traditional scientific mission, but a collective humanitarian effort that represented the best of human potential. As the first ships began their pre-launch sequences, Lena Chen felt something profound. This was more than a rescue mission. This was a statement about who humans could be when they transcended their individual limitations. The countdown began. Millions watched. Billions hoped. Humanity was about to attempt the impossible. The horizon approached the Krell system with a tension that could be felt through every molecular resonance of its advanced hull. Captain Sofia Martinez gripped the command interfaces, her eyes fixed on the holographic displays that showed the dying world in excruciating detail. Planetary collapse was no longer a theoretical concept. It was a visceral reality unfolding before their eyes. The first visual scans were devastating. Entire continental regions had transformed into radioactive wastelands. Atmospheric processors, once the pinnacle of the Krell technological achievement, sparked and failed in cascading sequences of destruction. Crystalline cities that had once reached into the sky now crumbled like fragile glass sculptures. 36 days remaining, announced the ship's quantum computer. Total planetary system failure imminent. Dr. Miguel Rodriguez worked frantically at his primary station, coordinating the deployment of the adaptive restoration network. What they were about to attempt had never been done before. A full-scale planetary healing intervention that went beyond traditional terraforming. The first deployment modules began to launch. Unlike traditional landing craft, these were living systems, part technology, part biological network. Developed from the complex communication patterns discovered in the original Krell transmission, each module was designed to interface directly with the planet's ecological and technological infrastructure. Quantum resonance alignment at 62%, called out Rosalie, the quantum biology specialist. Her fingers danced across interfaces that seemed to blur the line between biological control and technological manipulation. Diego Ramirez monitored the communication networks, tracking the subtle quantum exchanges between the deployment modules and the dying world. What they were doing was more than restoration. It was a form of planetary communication that humans had never attempted before. The first modules touched the planet's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a complex organism coming to life, the restoration network began to spread. Nanoscale processors interfaced with damaged geological systems. Adaptive biological networks started to respond to planetary stress points. It was like watching a massive planetary-scale immune response come online. "We're getting initial feedback," Rodriguez called out. "The system is learning. It's not just repairing, it's understanding." Zara Chen managed the primary communication interfaces. The quantum communication arrays picked up fragmented signals, not just from the planet's systems, but from something deeper. Echoes of the Krell civilization, preserved in quantum memory networks that had survived the planetary destruction. "The modules are finding trace quantum signatures," she reported. "It's like the planet is remembering itself." The restoration was not linear. It was a complex, adaptive process that responded to each micro-change in real time. Radioactive zones began to stabilize. Atmospheric processors that had been dormant for decades suddenly showed signs of reactivation. But the challenges were immense. Geological stress points continued to pulse with dangerous instability. Entire regions remained critical, requiring constant adaptive intervention. The restoration network worked like a massive, planet-wide healing system, constantly analyzing, adjusting, responding. 12 hours into the deployment, something extraordinary happened. The planet began to respond, not just through the restoration modules, but through something more profound. Quantum communication networks that the Krell had built into their very civilization began to reactivate. It was as if the planet itself was remembering how to live. "We're not just saving a planet," Rodriguez whispered. "We're helping it remember itself." The mission control room washed in a mixture of scientific excitement and profound humility. Humanity had attempted something that every other spacefaring civilization had deemed impossible. They were not just rescuers. They were witnesses to a planetary resurrection. As the first stabilization zones came online, Captain Martinez allowed herself a moment of hope. The impossible was becoming possible. The research station orbiting the recovering Krell homeworld hummed with an energy of discovery. Dr. Elena Gomes stood before a massive holographic display, her eyes wide with wonder at the transformations unfolding below. What had begun as a rescue mission had become something far more profound. The Krell were not extinct. Not entirely. Traces of their civilization, preserved in quantum memory networks and biological archives, were slowly reawakening. Each day brought new revelations that challenged everything humanity understood about survival, technology, and interspecies communication. Initial contact came through the most unexpected means. It wasn't a traditional communication signal or a diplomatic transmission. Instead, the Restoration Network began to decode complex quantum memory patterns, fragments of Krell consciousness that had been preserved in the planet's very infrastructure. It's like the entire planet is a massive, living computer, Dr. Gomes explained during a global briefing. The Krell didn't just build technology. They integrated their entire civilization into the planetary ecosystem. Technological exchanges began to happen at a pace that left scientific communities breathless. The Krell approach to quantum communication was generations beyond human understanding. Their biological engineering made human medical technology look primitive by comparison. Dio Ramirez spent countless hours decoding the quantum memory archives. Each fragment revealed layers of a civilization so advanced, so fundamentally different from human technological approaches, that it challenged core scientific paradigms. The restoration modules had done more than save a planet. They had become a bridge of communication, a way to slowly rebuild a civilization that had been on the brink of total extinction. Zara Chen managed the primary communication interfaces, working alongside quantum linguists to interpret the emerging Krell communication patterns. What they discovered was not just a language, but an entirely different way of perceiving reality. They don't distinguish between technology, biology, and consciousness the way we do, she reported during a specialized conference. For the Krell these are all part of a single, integrated system. The technological potential was staggering. The Krell had developed quantum communication networks that could store entire cultural memories. Their approach to planetary engineering made human terraforming look like crude experimental attempts. Political reactions were mixed. The Galactic Confederation, the same collective that had deemed the Krell beyond saving, now watched with a mixture of fascination and concern. Humanity had not just saved an alien civilization. They had potentially unlocked technologies that could transform galactic dynamics. Private research institutions and technology companies competed for access to the emerging Krell knowledge. But this was not a typical technology transfer. The Krell approach to sharing knowledge was as complex and integrated as their technological systems. Dr. Miguel Rodriguez discovered that the Planetary Restoration Network had become something more than a repair mechanism. It was now a living communication interface, continuously learning and adapting. We're not just talking about technology transfer, he explained during a global science symposium. We're witnessing the rebirth of an entire civilization, and potentially a completely new way of understanding technological development. The first physical traces of surviving Krell began to emerge, not individuals in the traditional sense, but quantum-preserved consciousness patterns that could interface with the restored planetary systems. They were neither fully biological nor purely technological, a hybrid form of existence that defied human categorization. Diplomatic channels opened slowly, carefully. Humanity had not just performed a rescue. They had become midwives to a civilization's rebirth. The global response was unprecedented. Educational systems began developing new disciplines to understand the Krell approach to technology, biology, and consciousness. Scientific research took radical new directions, inspired by the quantum-integrated approach of the rescued civilization. As the first year of restoration concluded, it became clear that this was more than a humanitarian mission. This was a fundamental shift in humanity's understanding of what was possible. The impossible had not just been achieved, it had been transformed into a new beginning. 10 years after the Krell rescue, the world looked fundamentally different. The United Nations Galactic Cooperation Center stood as a testament to humanity's transformed approach to interstellar relations, where once diplomatic channels were driven by economic and military considerations. Now they prioritized understanding, cooperation, and mutual technological exchange. Captain Sophia Martinez, now the primary liaison between humanity and the recovering Krell-Theri civilization, stood before a holographic display of the transformed homeworld. What had once been a dying planet was now a living testament to the power of compassionate intervention. The Krell-Theri were not just survivors. They were partners. Their quantum-integrated technologies had revolutionized every aspect of human scientific understanding. Medical systems now approached healing as a holistic, adaptive process. Planetary engineering became a collaborative dialogue rather than a destructive intervention. Communication technologies transcended traditional language barriers, creating connections that went beyond words. Diego Ramirez, now leading the Interspecies Communication Research Institute, explained the profound shift during a global broadcast. "We didn't just save a civilization," he said. "We learned an entirely new way of thinking about existence." The rescue mission had become a pivotal moment in human history. The Galactic Confederation, which had once dismissed the Krell-Theri as beyond saving, now looked to humanity as a model of interstellar cooperation. Other spacefaring species began to reconsider their approaches to planetary preservation and cultural exchange. Zara Chen had become the primary translator of Krell-Theri quantum memory archives. Her work revealed layers of cultural and technological knowledge that challenged every previous understanding of intelligence and civilization. The archives were not just historical records. They were living, adaptive networks of knowledge that continued to grow and evolve. Educational systems underwent a complete transformation. Schools now taught integrated learning approaches that blended technological, biological, and philosophical understanding. Students learned to see connections where previous generations saw only divisions. The economic model changed dramatically. Technologies developed from the Krell-Theri rescue created entire new industries focused on planetary restoration, adaptive communication, and holistic technological development. Companies that once competed now collaborated on solving complex global and interstellar challenges. Dr. Miguel Rodriguez continued to develop the planetary restoration technologies. What had begun as a rescue mission had become a comprehensive approach to ecological and technological healing. The restoration network was now used on multiple planets, helping to reverse ecological damage across human-controlled territories. The most profound changes were psychological. Humanity had discovered something fundamental about itself: the ability to look beyond immediate self-interest, the capacity to invest resources in saving a civilization with no immediate tangible benefit, the understanding that survival was not about individual or even species-level preservation, but about a broader, more interconnected approach to existence. Political boundaries began to blur. The mission had demonstrated the power of global collaboration in ways no previous initiative had achieved. Nations that had once been bitter rivals now worked together on interstellar research and preservation projects. The first generation of human Krell-Theri collaborative scientists began to emerge. These young researchers moved between biological and technological domains with a fluidity that would have seemed impossible a decade earlier. They saw the universe as an interconnected system of adaptive, living networks. During the 10-year commemoration of the rescue, a joint human Krell-Theri ceremony was held. Representatives from both civilizations gathered, not to celebrate a rescue, but to acknowledge a profound transformation. "We did not save you," Sophia Martinez said during her speech. "We learned from you. We grew with you." The Krell-Theri representative, a quantum-integrated consciousness that defied traditional understanding of individual existence, responded in a communication that was simultaneously visual, emotional, and conceptual. Humanity had changed, not through conquest or technological dominance, but through an act of pure, unconditional compassion. The impossible had become possible, and the universe would never be the same.